Mr. Roger, thanks for dropping by. More kitchen time. Let's get some of these plants that we hoiked out of their pots back into or onto something. This is getting silly. I've got so much clutter here, basically because I'm starting without having made my mind up. I'm doing it as I go along. So up here in the distance, we have a plate full of cleaned up plants. I took the advice of others and washed my charcoal, so what I've got left is usable. It's also soaking wet. I've got a new bag of sponge rock perlite, so I don't need to worry about picking up a load of dust this time round. I should have the big bits on top. I've got some coconut husk in to soak. I have some zombie moss in to soak. I may not need either of those two. I've got some small bark and I've got some medium-sized bark because I've run out of large bark, but I will go and get it. I did actually find some from somewhere in a totally separate bag, and I think I must have got it out and gone to use it and then, I don't know, for some reason put it away separately. But it'll do for crocking in the bottom of the pot. The plants I've got today don't need large bark. I've got an assortment of pots. If there's not enough or I haven't got the right size, I'll go and get some. I've still got my scissors in to soak in case I need them again, but I've trimmed roots. I shouldn't need the scissors, not for cutting the plants. I have my new labels written out, ready to go. Yeah, and I have some more labels and a pen in case I change my mind and split a plant. I've got some scissors for cutting stuff. I've got some raffia, and I've got some stakes in case I need them. I've got something to mix stuff in, and I've got a coffee. And I'm going to rattle through these fast. I may split it into two videos. I may not. But we've done the talking about why these are getting potted, so all we got to do is get them potted. Right, the two Nelly Islas, the one that's still got the spike on it has got virtually no roots. That is appalling. It's already starting to shrivel a bit. That bit might not make it, but that's going in a pot on its own. This Nelly Isla has some reasonable roots at the moment. It also has a new shoot. That's the important bit. So it's going to get some more roots soon. And it's not badly shriveled at all, really, as Nelly Islas go. So let's deal with those. That needs to go in a tight pot, somewhere about that big. Yep, that'll do, and that's going in bark. So we will have some chunky stuff. You don't need to crock a small pot like that, absolutely not necessary. We will have some small bark to fill in the gaps. So that will do for that. Is that enough to fill that pot? Yes. Guesswork, but yes. We will add some perlite in, some sponge rock, but in a small pot like that we don't need much, just a touch. Any big bits, just break them up. It breaks very easy. Watch the dust if you play with this stuff. Dust is dangerous. It does not degrade. It's got some sort of 1,000-year half-life or something. It doesn't degrade, so if you breathe it into your lungs, that's where it stays, and it doesn't break down. You're stuck with it. And it forms little tiny specks and catalysts for other things to grow on. So it's better that you don't breathe it in. Just don't. In doubt, wear a mask. We're used to them. It's something probably every household has now got, but never, I wouldn't have ever thought of owning a mask before. But if I want to go in my local supermarket, then that's the choice. Wear the mask or don't come in. Which I totally agree with. Right, number one then. Let's get this one in. That's my new growth. So, a bit in the bottom, not much. And make sure my roots sit down nicely. Make room for my new growth, so we put a little bit round the back so that we can now push the plant against it and we don't have to move it again. Position our new growth next. This is quite a fine root system. but it is capable of getting all squashed up and breaking, so we don't go too mad with the pressing down. This sort of plant should sit just in the media, as it's the sort of media that's not going to stay soaking wet. If you were deciding to pop this in something like moss or this cocoa husk, then I would suggest you pot it a bit higher, because otherwise the base of the plant will be soggy. But when you get a pot like this, it will dry from the top downwards, and the top will dry pretty damn quick. So as a consequence, the base of the plant isn't wet for anything longer than the short period of time after you water it, and then the roots can stay moist lower down in the pot. Right. Am I going to bother with that? Is that actually going to grow, do you think? Well, let me get my, that's the Nelly, ow, thumb. That's the Nelly Isla Red Velvet. So if we get the tag in it, so that's the Red Velvet, because it hasn't got a spike, which means I can now take the spike off of this one, because that's not going to stay stable, it just won't. However, like that, it will, and then it can go in a tiny pot, something like that, and it may or may not grow. We shall see. One way to find out, as they say. These roots on here aren't even good roots, they're just falling apart. I just left some on there so that with any luck it will stand up in the pot. But there's virtually no roots left on this plant at all. And I'm making sure this is quite low in the pot. It doesn't need a lot of media. As I said, it's probably not even going to make it. But to give it a chance, it needs to be able to grow into something. And the fact that there's very little there, if it does start to grow, I shall see the roots almost immediately. That's not very stable, but I'm not going to worry about it. So that is the other Nelly Isla. That is that one. It should sit upright once it's watered. Right, that's that. Next we have a dendrobium, and this is oh dear. I cut the spike off the Thailand black, so I now don't know which one's which. That's a freshly cut spike, so that's Thailand black. Right. That was lucky, wasn't it? Which means the other one is that strange Aussie's sweetness crossed with Tapiniense. Right, so this has got quite an extensive root system in one place and next to nothing in other places. I don't like the look of that pseudo bulb with that black bit. It's been eaten. Well, it's only going to cause a problem later down the line, so you can come off. That's better. Betterer. And that is a cane that's been cut off. I've got a feeling I did that, because that's got cinnamon on it. So this one has no new growth showing at the moment. It's got some viable roots, it's not bad. And I don't want that in a huge pot. Because yes, it's another one of those that I don't want staying wet in the winter. Brilliant, one with holes in, because that pot's a little too large, but because it's got the holes in, it'll do the job. So we can crock it and then plant it deep. And then it's got extra air around the bottom to make sure it doesn't stay wet in the winter. Right, so we'll have medium and large bark. There's even some small bark mixed in here where I've emptied stuff back into the bag. Not sure I'll be getting Orchiata bark next time round. I might try something else. And I'm seriously thinking about a trip down to see Sarah. At Burnham's In which case I will probably get some of the stuff that she uses, and while I'm there, get a couple of bags of her charcoal. Because I remember looking at it before I ever thought about using it, thinking that looks like quite good stuff and it's not full of dust. So maybe we'll get some of that. And then again we'll have a bit of perlite. Oh, some big bits. Does break up very easily. And some soggy charcoal. Create a reasonable mix. There we go. Right. Some of that. New growth's going to come out here off of that latest growth, I suspect, so I have to twist these roots to get them in. I'll put the smallest bulbs round near the back, out of the way. Again, put some media behind the plant and then push the plant back against it. Now I haven't got to put any more around the back. All the rest can go around here where most of the roots are. I don't want this to have too much media. I want it to be able to dry quickly after it's been watered, so I don't want the media right up to the top of the pot. I just need enough in there to cover the roots, preferably down where the air holes are, and that's definitely not stable in the pot, so we will try and get a stake in there and see if it will stay still. It's the trouble when you don't have a depth of media. A stake won't normally do much. That sounded like it went in a bit better. It's not good, is it? Sometimes you just have to keep trying. You just keep pushing it down, and occasionally it will just grab a hold and suddenly get a grip. Like that. So that's got it now. Now I just need a little clip. I don't need a little clip, I need a big clip. The cane that fat. Just something like that to clip around the plant and hold it against the cane. Still not brilliant, but it's better than it was. Oh, what's going to have to do, I shall water it in, and that is Thailand Black. What's that one? Next, what have we got next then? Giant. A giant plant with a not so giant root system. It's not got a very good root system at all now. I need that in a pretty big pot, but what I don't want is that pot staying wet before the roots get going. Now the roots are just starting, so they're not going to be long. So that's going in nothing more than large bark, no small bark this time. Plenty of air around. It's a chunky root system, large plant. So, oops. Right, a bit more charcoal in there. Stick a bit more perlite in. Not too much. Right. I can almost guarantee that this is not going to stand up in this pot, but it just might do on the grounds that it's almost going to touch the edges of the pot. It might just hang in there. Oops, there's a handful of that one on the floor. More clearing up to do. So like I say, if you do lots of things all at once, there's only one mess to clear up at the end of it. You keep doing it in dribs and drabs, you keep having to stop and clear. Well, you stop and have to clear up if you are working in somewhere like I do in my kitchen. You know, I can't just leave stuff in a mess. I need to clean this up, ready for its proper purpose, i.e. a kitchen. Yay! It's going to stand up. Right, base of the plant just in, making sure that my new little growth is not exposed. That way when the roots come out they're going to go straight down in the media. Yeah, dirty hands. And that is the Irish mist. Not that I'd forget that one. I'm just going to clean that floor, I'm going to tread it all in. If you start walking on that sponge rock, it just crushes into like a crunchy powder type thing, and then I was just going to say, that'd be good if I left that there and hadn't noticed. You wouldn't see much of the rest of this, would you? We'll put it out of the way. Well, that would have been a first if I'd actually done that and left that plant right in front of the camera. Right, what's next then? What else we got? Let's get this one done next. This is my my Miltonia Summer Glory. Decided to leave it intact as a single plant to get two new growths with the backup behind them, so that hopefully they both bloom well. If I'd split them, then they may well have bloomed on the next growth, but it would probably have been a weakened spike. And these blooms are very nice and last a nice long time. Now I need a intermediate sized pot. Don't like using large pots, but that will accommodate that plant, and it can be potted deep to compensate for the fact that the pot's a bit big. So just pot it low, that way it's hasn't got too much underneath it to stay wet too long. Just pot it deep. Like a production line here, isn't it? Gets a lot done in one go and still leaves time to think about it while you're going along, if you see what I mean. You can do the thinking bit as you go. You can do it all before. I mean, I'm sort of semi-thinking about what I'm going to do with this lot while I was washing them off in the sink. You know, because it's at that point you start seeing how good or bad the root system is. And you start thinking to yourself, well, if that's not a very good root system, I'm going to have to do this with it. So you're already thinking, the process is already running, so that by the time you get to grab hold of a pot, you've got a fair idea of what you plan on doing. Just enough for that one. Jolly good. So that's nice and stable. And that back pseudo bulb is not buried. It's sloping. You see, I put a slope on the media so that this back bulb's not buried. But the two front latest growths have got room to grow for 1 year, only one growth, and the roots will go straight down in the pot. We like that. So that's Miltonia Summer Glory. Nearly put it in front of the camera again. Oh, this could be a 2-cup of coffee job. What does the time say on here? It says you've been whizzing along. Oh God. Oh, it's useless because I stopped it, didn't I? Stopped to clean the floor, so it currently says this video is 3 minutes long. Oh, that are a porky pie, because in total it's quite a bit longer. Now this dendrobium ended up with a very good root system. This cleaned up nicely, very nicely. There are still a few dodgy ones in here, and I actually cut them so that they will now go in a pot. And again, this is a Latoria type. So we've done a Phalaenopsis type, that was the Thailand black. It doesn't like to get cold. If it's going to get cold, it certainly doesn't like to be wet as well. This comes into the same category, so this needs to be able to dry fast. That pot's far too big, but boy will it dry fast. So it's going in there. So it will be crocked. Do you know, I'm nearly out of, I'm going to have to go and get some more bark. In fact, I know I will, so I'll pull off now and just go and refresh my large bark. Right, where was I? So, lots of holes in the pot. All of the area up to and slightly above the air cone is crocking in a way, but it can still allow for the roots to go down in. I'm going to have to spread these roots slightly manually, and then I'm going to sit that gently on top of that. I'm going to take that leaf off because it's for some reason coming out from, oh, it's a tiny little old seedling bulb. I've got my new growth. That might not be the only one. There could easily be another new growth push up from somewhere, but nonetheless where these smaller bulbs are is the back of the plant. So we need some large bark. We need quite a bit. It's a large pot. What the hell is that? Oh. We'll have some perlite. Never quite sure whether perlite helps with drainage or whether it actually holds water and actually helps keep things moist. It might do both, who knows. I know it's full of holes, but if the holes are absolutely minute, then water won't get in there. Anyway, people say it's good stuff, so let's get on some. As I said, I like to change my mix every now and again. I mean, there was a time when practically everything got moss, and those times are gone. You know, I'm not using anywhere near as much moss nowadays. Still use it on mounts, obviously, but even that has changed because most of the time now, on a mount, there will be some zombie moss and some live moss. Whereas a few years ago, I wouldn't have dreamt of getting some live moss and using it. Just use the zombie moss and cross your fingers that it decides to come back to life. A lot of the time it is just algae and it just goes green. It's not actually growing, but there are occasions when it genuinely does start growing again. So hence the name, zombie moss. And you're not getting much at all. This is really the equivalent. Last time we did one of these, I put a rock in the bottom of a holy clay pot. What we're doing here is replicating that scenario where there's a very, very shallow root run and plenty of air. Now, in the summertime, when it's going to drink because it's probably actively growing, it's going to need watering more frequently than it would do. Yeah, if it was potted, you know, not in a shallow pot. But during the winter time, it'll dry fast, and that's all I'm after. So we've got crocking and an air cone, lots of holes all around the edge. So we're replicating the holy clay pot, basically, and that's what it's going to get. So I'm just putting some smaller stuff around the new growth because that's where the next lot of roots will come out. Right, that's that one. Well, this towel's going straight in the wash. It's absolutely filthy. And that is Dendrobium Aussie's Sweetness crossed with Tapiniense, which is an unusual Latoria type. And I reckon it might bloom in the not too distant future. You never know. Right, that leaves us with the Miltoniopsis. And that's going nowhere near bark. So we can have a clear up now. Let's get rid of a lot of this. Spillages. Apart from that dead leaf, I can go back in there. Get back out in the bag, complete with charcoal, but not with so much dust. So get that out of the way. Now we have the Miltoniopsis Hybrid. We have 3 pieces and they're all going in the same pot. They're all going in the same pot because I'm going to use the coconut husk. So they should stay nice and moist, which suits their roots, and putting them all together makes quite a nice cluster. The first thing I've got to do is see we've got a new growth there, so that needs to be on the outside of the plant. What have we got there? It's difficult to say what that bit's going to do. Both bits have had a spike. It's difficult to tell which is the latest. So I'm just going to see if I can get down in there. Do we have a... Actually, I'm going to take that off because that's not very happy at the base. There was a little bit of rot at the base of this. It's got two new roots, so I'm going to say that that's probably the latest growth, not that one. So that needs to go on the outside. And that's a single piece with virtually no roots again. So that can just go anywhere. So I've got a cluster like that. I'm going to try and get them all around the same height so that we haven't got anything sunk, you know, buried to any great extent. Ow! So about there, I think that's all the bulbs roughly at the same height, and then we're going to use this stuff. Again, I'm going to pop these shallow and just give this a bit of a squeeze. But by potting it shallow in the pot will hold these pieces upright. And if in a couple of months' time we've got a pot full of roots, it can always be lifted out and put them, you know, put a bit deeper. Just lift it out, literally put some new stuff in underneath and plonk it back on top. It's like potting on, but without putting any more around the outside, sort of thing. Not going mad with the pressing down here. Miltoniopsis roots are a bit delicate. But this stuff's got to be in firmly enough to hold the plant and reduce the air gaps, because it naturally leaves very big air gaps, this stuff. It's very irregular shaped. You get all sorts of gaps. You get bits all squashed up together with no gaps, and then you get bits where there are gaps. So you just got to work with it. I have to go very careful now because I'm right where those new roots are. Both of them. And again now. Right, how are we doing? Now again, see, with using this stuff, because it's got a fair bit of air around it, it doesn't matter if it sneaks slightly up the bulbs, because when this is watered, you know, it'll be approaching dryness when it gets watered, and the top half an inch, centimetre or so, will be dry the next day. It'll just evaporate off. So the bulbs can sit in it quite nicely, guarantee that the roots go straight down in the media without the bulbs rotting. Because they're not going to stay wet. The bottom of the bulbs, the base, is not going to stay wet because this stuff will evaporate off fast off the top. Slower in the winter because it's cooler. Right, Miltoniopsis Hybrid. And that is the lot. Right, I will clear up mess. See, I just finished my coffee off. It's in here some. Oh, there it is. There's my coffee. It's difficult to even see it in amongst this lot. And then we'll have a quick last look at the plants. That's not a bad morning's work. I'm going to have it. It's lunchtime now. I've been working on and off most of the morning doing this sort of stuff and other stuff. And my bread is cool enough to cut myself a nice slice. With probably butter and strawberry jam, and that'll be lunch. Right, last look then. Miltoniopsis went in the cocoa husk. That won't need watering, that's still very wet as it came straight out of soaking. I'll watch this because as it starts to dry it'll need watering again. Doesn't hold as much water when it's freshly soaked from dry. Eventually it will. So keep an eye on that one, but not water now. Everything else will get a good soak. So that was our Thailand Black, Sacrifice the Spike. Little bit wobbly in the pot, not exactly brilliant roots, but hopefully enough to get it going. The other dendrobium was the Latoria type, which is this funny one. Aussie's Sweetness crossed with Tapiniense. Good roots on that, basically, so that should pick up. And it has a new growth to start some more roots on top of what it's already got. Media tapered away towards the back so that these lower areas don't get buried. Still leaking charcoal. The Nelly Islas got split as they are two separate plants. They are different. If they were the same, they might have gone in the same pot. So that's the odd one, an unknown variety, although it's probably something like Swiss Beauty. And then this is the one I actually bought, the one which is in fact a replacement for one I actually lost. And that's Nelly Isla Red Velvet. Lousy roots, basically, as expected. This is the giant with a huge pseudobulb and a nice new growth with new roots starting. So this one should pick up quite quick. It's Odontocidium, which is a little bit of a misdemeanor because most of the odontoblossoms were reclassed as oncidiums. So may well be an oncidium. Anyway, and then the last one up here was the Miltonia Summer Glory. Good root system on that. Ended up staying in one pot rather than splitting the plant to give it strength to get the next two growths to grow on and hopefully have good spikes on them, and then it can be moved. So there we go. Nice morning's work. Let's get these, other than the Miltoniopsis, everything needs a good soak now, which helps sort of rinse dust out and all that sort of stuff. Put up to drain, and then they can go back out in the grow room. So yeah, as I say, good morning's work, good progress there. I've got another session like this that's another set of new plants that haven't been looked at, mainly Cattleya types actually, so that could be holy clay pot type sessions. We shall see, but that's for the future. Thanks for dropping by, see you next time.